I inherited the property in late September, which gave me exactly 4 weeks to prepare before the first snow. My uncle's lawyer handed me a manila envelope containing the deed, a hand-drawn map, and a single-page letter in my uncle's tight mechanical script. The letter was brief. Follow the procedures. Do not improvise. You'll understand after the first week. The homestead sat on 47 acres in northern Maine, 11 miles from the nearest paved road. My uncle had lived there for 32 years without incident, according to the lawyer, who added that detail twice, as if I might not believe it the first time. The property taxes were paid through the end of the year. There was no mortgage. I had $17,000 in credit card debt and had just been laid off from a job that barely covered rent in Portland. The decision made itself. I drove up on October 2nd in a borrowed truck loaded with supplies. The access road was 2 miles of packed dirt that turned to mud in the rain, which it was doing when I arrived. The truck slid twice before I reached the clearing where the cabin stood. It was larger than I expected, a 2-story structure with a metal roof and a wraparound porch. Solar panels lined the south-facing slope of the roof. A satellite dish pointed at an angle I would later learn never to adjust. The key was under the third porch plank from the left, exactly where the map indicated. Inside, the cabin was clean and organized with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. Every can in the pantry faced forward with labels perfectly aligned. The firewood was stacked in the mudroom with mathematical precision, each log cut to identical length. A clipboard hung on a nail beside the kitchen table. The top sheet was titled October Procedures in my uncle's handwriting. I read it standing up, still wearing my wet jacket. The list contained 43 items. Some were mundane. Check the solar battery levels at 7 in the morning and 6 in the evening. Maintain indoor temperature between 62 and 68 degrees. Test the satellite phone every third day at noon. Others were specific in ways I didn't understand. Keep the north window covered between 2:15 and 2:45 every morning. Never respond to knocking between midnight and 4 in the morning. Count the fence posts along the eastern property line every Sunday and report discrepancies in the logbook. Report to whom, I wondered. My uncle was dead. The lawyer had been clear about that. At the bottom of the list, in different ink, suggesting a later addition, do not go into the woods after dark for any reason. Do not investigate animal sounds that seem close but show no movement. Do not open the basement door after sunset unless completing the weekly inspection and then only following the attached protocol. I flipped the page. The basement protocol was detailed enough to require its own sheet. The October list was the first of 12, one for each month, kept in a binder on the kitchen shelf. I spent that first evening reading through all of them, making notes, trying to find patterns. The procedures changed seasonally. January required different window coverage times. July had a prohibition against using the outdoor shower after 9 in the evening. March specified that the generator must run for exactly 12 minutes at 3-hour intervals during the equinox week, no more and no less. My uncle had lived this way for 32 years. I unpacked the truck as the rain turned to drizzle. The solar system was more sophisticated than I expected, with a battery bank in the shed that could run the cabin for 3 days without sun. The water came from a well with an electric pump and a hand pump backup. The septic system was new, professionally installed 5 years ago according to a receipt I found filed in a cabinet. Everything worked. Everything was maintained. Everything followed a schedule marked in the logbook with check marks that marched down the page in perfect columns. My first night I slept upstairs in the bedroom my uncle had used. The bed was made with hospital corners. The closet contained 4 identical sets of work clothes arranged by season. On the nightstand sat a wind-up alarm clock set to 6:30 and a flashlight with fresh batteries. I tested the flashlight. The beam was strong and steady. I woke at 2:16 in the morning to the sound of footsteps on the porch. The steps were slow and evenly paced, moving from the south corner toward the front door. I counted them. 15 steps, a pause, then 15 more, continuing around the east side of the house. The wood creaked under weight. I lay in bed listening, remembering the rules. Do not respond to knocking between midnight and 4 in the morning. The footsteps weren't knocking, but I stayed quiet anyway. The steps completed a full circuit of the house, 212 individual footfalls, which I counted in the dark. Then they stopped. I got up at dawn and checked the porch. The wood was wet from rain, but there were no prints, no mud, no disturbed water pattern. I checked the ground around the foundation. Soft mud, easy to mark, nothing. I made coffee and reviewed the October procedures again. Item 17. Footsteps circling the house are common October through March. Do not investigate. Do not acknowledge. Continue normal morning routine. My normal morning routine became the routine on the list. I checked the solar batteries at 7. The system was at 84%. I checked the propane level for the backup stove, 3/4 full. I counted the fence posts along the eastern line, walking the property boundary with the map. There were 63 posts, same as the map showed. I noted this in the logbook with the date and time. The fence itself puzzled me. It was only 4 feet high, too short to contain anything, too low to mark a serious boundary. The posts were metal rather than wood, driven deep and evenly spaced at exactly 20 feet intervals. At the base of every 5th post was a small cairn of stones, 3 rocks stacked with the largest on bottom. The map showed these cairns, but offered no explanation. I spent the first week establishing rhythms. The procedures became familiar through repetition. Up at 6:30, check batteries, check propane, check water pressure, check weather radio. Breakfast at 7:15. Morning tasks until 11, lunch, afternoon tasks until 4, check batteries again at 6, dinner at 7, radio check on channel 6 at 8, evening tasks until 10, read until 11, bed by 11:30. The north window required attention every night. At exactly 2:15 in the morning, the alarm would wake me and I would go downstairs to close the curtain. At 2:45, I would return to open it. The window faced the woods. Nothing was visible in the darkness beyond my reflection in the glass. On the 4th night, I asked the obvious question out loud, alone in the kitchen. What happens if I don't close it? I closed it anyway at 2:15. I was not ready to experiment. The satellite phone worked, but I had no one to call. My uncle had listed 3 numbers in the binder. The lawyer, a supply delivery service, and a number labeled emergency only with a Portland area code. I tested the phone at noon on day 3 as instructed. The display showed full signal. I called the lawyer to confirm my arrival. He seemed relieved. You found the procedures? He asked. Yes. You're following them? Yes. I had not known about this condition. 1 full year, I repeated. October 2nd through October 1st. The will specifies that I'm to verify your compliance quarterly via the logbook photos you'll send. First one due end of December. Just photograph the relevant pages and email them. What happens if I don't follow the procedures? He was quiet for a moment. Your uncle specified that you would forfeit the inheritance. Beyond that, I don't know. He never explained the reasons, but he was a rational man, and he lived there successfully for 3 decades, so I suggest you trust his judgment. I asked what my uncle had died from. Heart attack, the lawyer said, in his sleep at age 74. Peaceful and expected. The body had been found by the supply delivery driver on a Tuesday morning, sitting in the kitchen chair with the logbook open to that day's page. Every item had been checked off except the noon radio test. On the 8th night, I heard something in the woods. It was 10:35, and I was reading in bed when the sound started. A voice calling, high and thin, like a child shouting for help. It came from the northwest, beyond the fence line, maybe 200 yards into the trees. I stood at the bedroom window. The voice called 3 more times, each slightly different in pitch and rhythm, as if whoever was shouting kept losing their breath. I grabbed the flashlight from the nightstand and started for the stairs before I remembered the rules. Do not investigate animal sounds that seem close but show no movement. I stopped halfway down the stairs. The voice was not an animal sound, but it showed no movement. The location never changed. The same 200-yard distance, the same northwest direction. A person in distress would move while calling. A person seeking help would come closer to the light of the cabin. I went back upstairs and sat on the bed with the flashlight in my lap. The voice continued for 6 more minutes by my watch, then stopped mid-word. The silence after was complete. In the morning, I walked the northwest fence line. The woods beyond the boundary were dense with spruce and pine, the ground soft with decades of needles. I saw no tracks, no broken branches, no sign anyone had been there. At the fence, I found the cairns undisturbed, 3 stones each marking every 5th post, item 31 on the October list. If you hear calls for help from the woods at night, verify fence cairns the following morning. If all cairns are intact, make no entry into the woods. If any cairn is disturbed, follow emergency protocol C immediately. I checked all 63 cairns that morning, all intact. I made no entry into the woods. The supply delivery came on Thursday, the 10th day. A truck arrived at 9 in the morning, driven by a man in his 60s who introduced himself as Ray. He knew the property. He'd been making deliveries here for 18 years. Your uncle was a good customer, Ray said, unloading boxes onto the porch. Always paid in advance, always had the list ready, never any problems. I helped him carry the supplies inside. Propane canisters, batteries, canned goods, rice, pasta, coffee, salt. The salt came in 25-pound bags. I received 3. That's a lot of salt, I said. Ray glanced at me. You're new to this. I am. Your uncle ordered 3 bags every 2 weeks, October through April. Used it for the basement mostly. Sometimes the threshold lines. He set down the last box. You read his procedures? I'm following them exactly. Good. Don't improvise. He pulled a clipboard from his truck and had me sign for the delivery. Next one's in 2 weeks. You need anything special, call the number. Otherwise, I just bring the standard order. What's the standard order? He showed me the list. It matched the supplies I'd just received, item for item and quantity for quantity. My uncle had established this order years ago and never changed it. Ray climbed into his truck, then stopped with the door open. Your uncle told me something once. Might be useful for you to hear. I waited. He said the homestead makes you choose between curious and safe. You can't be both out here. Choose safe. He drove away, the truck bouncing down the muddy access road. I spent the afternoon going through the supplies. The salt was fine grain, industrial. The quantity was excessive for winter ice management. The procedures mentioned salt 3 times, basement inspection, threshold maintenance, and cairn reinforcement if needed. None of these explained 3 bags every 2 weeks. At 2:15 that night, I closed the north window curtain. At 2:45, I opened it. Between those 2 times, I sat in the dark kitchen, listening. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the tick of the clock. Through the south window, I could see a sliver of moon low on the horizon. At 2:32, something walked past the north side of the house. I was looking south when I heard it. The footsteps were lighter than before, quicker, with an irregular rhythm that suggested 4 legs instead of 2. They passed from east to west, staying tight to the foundation. I counted the steps out of habit. 41, quick and uneven. then silence. The curtain was closed over the north window. I did not go to look. At 2:45, I opened the curtain. The woods beyond were dark and still. The second week established patterns within patterns. The circling footsteps came every night, always starting around 2 in the morning, always exactly 212 steps. The voice from the woods came twice more, both times between 10 and 11 in the evening, always from the same northwest location. I verified the cairns after each occurrence. All intact. I discovered additional procedures written on loose papers tucked throughout the binder. These were amendments, additions made at various times in different ink. Addendum, November 3rd. If the generator fails to start on the third pull, do not attempt a fourth. Wait 5 minutes, then begin the sequence again. Never exceed 3 pulls in succession. Addendum, January 17. The deer that appears near the southwest fence post in winter will approach within 10 yards but not cross the fence line. Do not feed it. Do not photograph it. Eye contact is acceptable, but prolonged staring is not recommended. Addendum, April 2nd. If you wake to find the kitchen table moved, return it to its marked position immediately. Check that all 4 legs align with the floor indentations. The table must not be off-center during sleep hours. There were 43 such addendums scattered through the binder. Each was dated. Each described a single specific situation and the required response. None explained why. My uncle had been a meticulous man. On day 16, I performed the weekly basement inspection. The protocol was precise. 1. Basement inspections occur every Sunday at 3 in the afternoon. No earlier, no later. 2. Gather the following before descending: flashlight with fresh batteries, salt bag, watch, logbook, and pen. 3. Unlock the basement door using the brass key on the ring. The basement key is marked with red tape. 4. Open door, prop with the wooden wedge stored beside the frame. 5. Turn on the basement light. If the light fails, do not descend. Close and lock the door. Wait until the following Sunday. 6. Descend the stairs at a normal pace. Count the steps. There should be 14. 7. At the bottom, survey the room from the landing. Look for any disturbances, moved objects, new stains, changes to the salt lines on the floor. 8. If salt lines are intact, inspection is complete. Ascend, close, and lock door. Record findings in logbook. 9. If salt lines are broken, follow salt line protocol before ascending. 10. Total time in basement should not exceed 4 minutes. The basement was unfinished, with a concrete floor and stone foundation walls. The ceiling was low, maybe 6.5 feet. The space was 40 feet by 30 feet, filled with storage shelves containing supplies, tools, old furniture, and boxes labeled in my uncle's handwriting. The salt lines were drawn on the floor in a pattern I didn't recognize. Not a circle, not a square, a complex shape that divided the basement into sections, with the stairs landing in the largest section. The lines were thick, maybe 2 inches wide, made of pure salt poured in careful rows. They showed no breaks, no gaps. I counted the stairs ascending, 14. I locked the door and recorded in the logbook, Week 3 basement inspection. Salt lines intact, no disturbances noted, duration 3 minutes 20 seconds. That night the footsteps came at 1:58, 17 minutes earlier than usual. I was still awake, reading in bed. The steps were faster this time, almost running, making a full circuit in half the usual time. 106 steps total. Then silence. Then, 5 minutes later, a second circuit at the normal pace. 212 steps. I did not go to investigate. I did not open the curtain early. I waited until 2:15 and performed the window procedure exactly as specified. The October procedures included a section on anomalies. Variations in established patterns do not require action unless explicitly addressed elsewhere in these procedures. Document all variations in the logbook with date, time and description. Continue normal routine. I documented the early footsteps. I continued the normal routine. On day 20, I noticed the fence posts had changed. It was Sunday morning and I was walking the eastern boundary for my weekly count. I reached the northeast corner and stopped. There were 64 posts instead of 63. I counted again slowly, touching each post as I passed. 64. The map showed 63. Last week's count had been 63. I walked the full boundary, counting all sides. The total was now 256 posts, 4 more than the map's 252. The spacing between posts remained exactly 20 feet. The cairns still marked every 5th post, now with 1 additional cairn on each side. The fence showed no gaps, no obvious insertion points. The posts matched in age and weathering. I checked the October procedures. Item 42. If fence post count increases, document in logbook and verify count 3 days consecutively. If increase persists, adjust map accordingly and continue routine. If count decreases, follow emergency protocol A immediately. I documented the increase. I would verify the count on Monday and Tuesday. Emergency Protocol A occupied its own page in the binder. Protocol A, post reduction. If any fence post count is lower than the previous week's count, this indicates a boundary breach. Take the following steps immediately. 1. Verify count twice to confirm reduction. 2. Gather supplies for 72 hours, food, water, batteries, salt, flashlight, radio, first aid kit. 3. Move supplies to the upstairs bedroom. 4. Close and lock all ground floor doors and windows. 5. Draw salt line across the top of the staircase, inside edge, continuous with no gaps, minimum 1 inch thick. 6. Remain upstairs until dawn 3 days following the count reduction. 7. Use satellite phone only for emergency contact, number listed. Do not call to verify protocol. Protocol is verified. 8. After 3 days, inspect basement and ground floor before resuming normal routine. If major disturbances found, evacuate property and call emergency number. I read this protocol 3 times. The severity was disproportionate to what seemed like a counting error. But my uncle had lived here for 32 years without incident by following these procedures exactly. I decided to trust his judgment. Monday's count, 64 posts on the east side, 256 total. Tuesday's count, 64 posts on the east side, 256 total. I updated the map with the new post locations and continued the routine. The October nights grew colder. I maintained the indoor temperature between 62 and 68 degrees as specified, using the wood stove for heat. The wood consumption was steady at 4 logs every 6 hours. The supply in the mudroom would last through November if I rationed properly. Ray delivered supplies on schedule, bringing more salt and the standing order of food and batteries. He asked how I was adjusting. Following the procedures, I said. Any questions? I had hundreds. I asked the one that seemed safest. Did my uncle ever explain why he lived out here? Ray considered this while unloading propane canisters. He told me once he liked the certainty, said most places in the world you don't know what the rules are until you break them. Out here the rules are explicit. Follow them and you're safe. Simple exchange. Safe from what? That's the question, isn't it? Ray set down the last canister. Your uncle never said, and I never asked. Some things you don't question if they're working. He climbed into his truck. You doing okay out here alone? Yes. Really? I thought about the footsteps, the voice in the woods, the changing fence posts. I thought about my uncle's 43 procedures and 43 addendums, his 32 years of perfect compliance. Yes, I said again. Ray nodded and drove away. That night at 10:47, I heard the voice from the woods again. This time it was different, lower pitched, adult rather than child, but still calling for help from the same northwest location, same 200-yard distance. "Hello, is anyone there? I need help." The voice had an accent I couldn't place. British, maybe. Australian. It called 11 times over 7 minutes, then stopped. In the morning, I checked the cairns, all intact. I did not enter the woods. October 27th, day 26, the radio spoke to me. I was performing the 8 o'clock check on Channel 6, holding down the transmit button and saying, "Radio check, October 27, as specified." The response was supposed to be silence. The radio was not connected to any network. The daily check verified only that the equipment functioned. This time a voice answered. "Radio check received, signal clear." I stared at the handset. The voice was male, neutral tone, professional. I released the transmit button. Static hissed from the speaker. I checked the frequency. Channel 6. Correct. I checked the procedure list. "Radio check every evening at 8. Speak clearly." Radio check, followed by date. "No response expected. If response received, do not engage. Power off radio. Wait 5 minutes. Power on, and complete check again." I powered off the radio, waited 5 minutes by the kitchen clock, powered it back on and tried again. Radio check, October 27. Silence, static, no response. I logged the incident and continued the routine. The next 3 nights were quiet. No footsteps, no voices from the woods, no radio responses. The absence of anomalies felt like its own kind of wrongness. A held breath before something worse. On October 31st, I found the first amendment that mentioned November. Addendum, November Eve. The transition from October to November procedures must occur precisely at midnight. Set alarm for 11:45. At that time, review November procedures completely. At midnight, begin November routine regardless of any ongoing sounds or events. Do not delay transition for any reason. November's procedure list was longer, 56 items instead of 43. The window timing changed. North window covered 2:05 to 2:35 instead of 2:15 to 2:45. New items appeared. Verify door locks at 10 in the evening in addition to bedtime check. Maintain fire in wood stove continuously November 1st through March 31st. Check basement salt lines every Sunday and Wednesday instead of only Sunday. Some October prohibitions lifted, others intensified. I set my alarm for 11:45 and read through all 56 November procedures twice before midnight. At exactly 12 o'clock, I began the November routine with item 1. Extinguish all candles and lamps. Use only electric light or wood stove light during November. I blew out the kerosene lamp I'd been reading by and switched to the battery-powered lamp. The flame died with a thin trail of smoke. From outside came a sound like stones sliding across stones. It lasted 15 seconds, a grinding scrape that circled the house from south to west to north to east and back to south. Then silence. Item 3 of November procedures. Sounds of stones or grinding during the first night of November are expected. Do not investigate. Continue routine. I continued the routine. November began with cold rain that lasted 4 days. The solar panels produced minimal charge. I ran the backup generator according to schedule, 12 minutes at 3-hour intervals, never longer, starting each time on the third pull or not at all. The battery bank drained to 62% before the sun returned on day 5. The fence post count held steady at 256. The footsteps came every night, always at 2 in the morning now, always 212 steps. I stopped counting them consciously. My mind tracked them automatically, noting when they started, when they stopped, never varying. On November 8th, I made a mistake. It was minor, easily corrected, but it was the first true deviation from the procedures. The mistake was this. I closed the north window curtain at 2:04 instead of 2:05. 1 minute early. I realized the error immediately, checked my watch, saw 2:04 blinking on the display. I opened the curtain, waited until exactly 2:05, then closed it again properly. The curtain procedure specified 2:05 to 2:35. I had introduced a 1-minute overlap with my own error and correction. I stood in the dark kitchen, listening. Nothing changed. No sounds, no movement. At 2:35, I opened the curtain on schedule. The woods beyond were empty and still. In the morning, I found the first broken salt line in the basement. It was Wednesday, inspection day. I descended the stairs at 3 in the afternoon with my supplies. The light worked. I counted 14 steps. At the bottom, I surveyed from the landing and immediately saw the break. One of the salt lines had a gap near the center of the room, approximately 8 inches wide. The salt hadn't been scattered or smudged. It was simply absent, as if that section had never been poured. November procedures included a salt line protocol separate from the October version. Salt line protocol, November through March. If any salt line shows breaks or gaps, repair immediately before ascending. Pour new salt from the storage bag to fill gap completely. Line must be continuous with no breaks narrower than 2 inches. After repair, observe the repaired section for 1 full minute. If salt remains in place, inspection is complete. If salt disappears or moves during observation, evacuate basement immediately and follow emergency protocol B. I poured new salt to fill the 8-inch gap. The line became continuous. I stood on the landing and watched for 1 minute by my watch. The salt remained in place. I completed the inspection, ascended the stairs, locked the door. Total time, 7 minutes. That night, the footsteps changed rhythm. They started at 2 in the morning as usual, but moved faster with a clicking sound accompanying each step, like claws on wood instead of feet. The circuit took 90 seconds instead of the usual 4 minutes. 112 steps instead of 212. I documented this in the logbook. I did not investigate. The next morning I woke to find the kitchen table had moved. It was only 6 inches off its marked position, but the legs no longer aligned with the indentations in the floor. I moved it back, checking carefully that all 4 legs seated properly. The table was heavy oak, not something that moved easily. I checked the door locks. All secure. The windows were latched. Nothing else in the house appeared disturbed. Item 41 of November procedures. If furniture moves during the night, return it to marked position immediately upon waking. Do not attempt to secure furniture in place. Movement will continue regardless of preventive measures. I added this to the growing list of things I accepted without understanding. Ray's delivery on November 10th brought the standard supplies plus something extra, a package addressed to me in my uncle's handwriting. Ray handed it over with no comment, just a brief nod that suggested he knew what it contained. Inside was a letter and a second, smaller envelope labeled "Open only if you decide to leave." The letter read, "If you've made it to November, you're doing well. The transition period is the hardest. By now you've noticed the homestead has its own ecology. You're learning the boundaries of what's negotiable and what isn't. Some advice: do not attempt to categorize what you experience here. The human mind wants to label and explain. Resist that urge. The procedures work without understanding. Understanding often precedes mistakes. The winter will be harder. December through February have their own intensities. But if you've followed the procedures exactly so far, you've built the right instincts. Trust those instincts over your curiosity. The second envelope contains information you might want later. Open it only if you've decided you can't finish the year. What's inside will help you leave safely, but once you read it, you cannot unread it, and that knowledge will make staying impossible. You have a choice ahead. Everyone who lives here faces it eventually. The homestead offers security through compliance. That security is real, but the cost is accepting that some boundaries cannot be tested. Choose carefully. I chose to stay for 32 years. That was right for me. It might not be right for you. Your Uncle James. I put both envelopes in the binder and continued the routine. The voice from the woods returned on November 14th. This time it was my mother's voice. My mother had died 3 years ago. I recognized her cadence, her particular way of extending vowels, the slight rasp she'd had from decades of smoking. The voice came from the northwest, as always, 200 yards into the trees. "Sweetie, can you hear me? I'm lost out here." I stood at the upstairs window with the lights off, listening. My mother called for help 7 times over 5 minutes. Each repetition was perfect, identical in tone and timing. Too perfect. My mother had never repeated herself exactly. She'd been spontaneous, improvisational, slightly chaotic. This was a recording played through an organic speaker. I went downstairs and verified the cairns by flashlight. All intact. I did not enter the woods. Item 37 of November procedures. Voices of family or loved ones may occur November through March. These are not your family or loved ones. Do not respond. Do not investigate. Verify cairns the following morning and continue routine. I had now heard my mother's voice, a child's voice, and an adult stranger's voice, all from the same location, all asking for help. The homestead was testing different approaches. I went to bed at 11:30 and closed the north window curtain at 2:05 and opened it at 2:35, and in the morning the salt lines in the basement had 2 more breaks. Wednesday inspection at 3 in the afternoon. The new gaps were larger, 12 inches and 14 inches, in different sections of the pattern. I repaired both with salt from the storage bag. I observed for 1 full minute each. The salt remained in place. Time in basement, 9 minutes. That evening I read through the emergency protocols in detail. Protocol B was for salt line failures. Protocol B, salt line failure. If salt disappears or moves during observation period after repair, the basement containment is failing. Take the following steps immediately. 1. Exit basement without delay. Do not attempt additional repairs. 2. Lock basement door and place the spare brass key in the kitchen drawer. Do not carry key on person. 3. Gather 72-hour supplies as specified in Protocol A. 4. Move to upstairs bedroom and establish salt line at top of stairs, minimum 2 inches thick, continuous with no gaps. 5. Remain upstairs for 5 full days and nights. Use chamber pots stored in bedroom closet. Eat food that requires no cooking. 6. During containment period, maintain silence after dark. No lights, no movement, no sounds. 7. After 5 days, inspect basement before resuming routine. If salt lines have reformed themselves, normal operations can continue. If damage has spread beyond original pattern, evacuate property and call emergency number. 8. Do not attempt to understand or interpret what occurs during containment period. Focus only on procedure compliance. I had not needed Protocol B yet. I hope to never need it. The remainder of November established a new baseline. The footsteps came nightly in their accelerated pattern. The table moved twice more, always while I slept. The salt lines in the basement developed gaps every inspection, always requiring repair, always holding after repair. The deer appeared on November 23rd. It was exactly where the addendum had described, near the southwest fence post, 10 yards from the boundary. A large doe, winter coat fully grown, standing motionless in the afternoon light. I watched from the kitchen window. The deer watched back. We maintained eye contact for 3 minutes. I did not stare exactly. I looked away, looked back, keeping my gaze soft and indirect. The deer never moved. Then, at some signal I didn't detect, it turned and walked into the woods with a smooth, natural gait. It appeared 3 more times before December. Always the same location, always the same distance, always that same prolonged eye contact. I did not feed it. I did not photograph it. I did not approach the fence. Item 44 of November procedures. The deer is a marker, not a threat. Its presence indicates correct boundary maintenance. If the deer crosses the fence line, follow Emergency Protocol D immediately. Protocol D was for boundary breaches. I did not read it in detail. I did not want to imagine scenarios that required Protocol D. December arrived with snow. The first storm dropped 7 inches over 2 days. I switched to the winter procedures, 68 items instead of November's 56. New requirements included hourly snow depth measurements during active snowfall, maintaining clear paths to the shed and wood pile with specifications for path width and snow wall height, and a modified window routine with additional coverage times. The generator protocol changed. Instead of 12 minutes every 3 hours, December required 15 minutes every 2 hours during snow events. The battery bank could not sustain the cabin on solar power alone during the short winter days. I shoveled according to specification. Paths 3 feet wide, snow walls no higher than 18 inches cleared to bare ground. The work was exhausting but precise. Each measurement mattered. On December 8th, I photographed the logbook pages as the lawyer had requested. 3 months of compliance, documented in my uncle's format. Every procedure checked, every anomaly noted, every inspection recorded. I sent the photos via satellite link and received a 1-line response. Compliance verified. Continue. The footsteps in the snow appeared on December 10th. I woke at 2 in the morning to the familiar circling pattern, but this time I could hear the crunch of snow under each step. In the morning I went outside to look. A clear trail of prints circled the cabin exactly once, spacing and depth consistent throughout. The prints were human, bare feet, adult-sized. They appeared in snow that was 3 inches deep at the time of the circling. The temperature that night had been 14 degrees Fahrenheit. December procedures, item 52. Tracks in snow will appear December through March. Measure and document, but do not follow tracks beyond the property boundary. Tracks may lead to or away from the cabin. Direction is not significant. I measured. The prints were exactly 9 inches long, 4 inches wide. The stride was consistent at 32 inches. The depth was 1¼ inches, suggesting weight of approximately 140 pounds. I documented this and continued the routine. The basement inspections now occurred twice weekly, Sundays and Wednesdays. The salt lines broke with increasing frequency. By mid-December, I was repairing an average of 4 gaps per inspection, some as wide as 18 inches. The pattern was degrading. On December 18th, the radio spoke again. 8 o'clock check, channel 6. I transmitted. Radio check, December 18. The response was immediate. Radio check received. Weather advisory in effect. Heavy snow likely December 20 through 23. Prepare accordingly. I powered off the radio and waited 5 minutes as procedure specified. Powered on and completed the check again. No response the second time. I checked the weather radio on channel 8. The automated forecast confirmed heavy snow in the region starting December 20th. The radio voice had provided accurate information. I prepared according to the December storm protocol. Generator fuel verified at 75 gallons. Firewood supply moved from shed to mudroom. Emergency supplies staged upstairs. Backup batteries charged to maximum capacity. All salt bags accessible. Paths cleared and marked with stakes. The storm arrived at 4 in the morning on the 20th. By dawn, we had 14 inches of new snow. By noon, 27 inches. The wind built to 40 miles per hour, creating drifts that buried the fence posts on the eastern side. I ran the generator on storm protocol, 20 minutes every 90 minutes. The battery bank fluctuated between 70 and 85%. The snow continued for 3 full days. During the storm, the anomalies intensified. The circling footsteps came every 2 hours instead of once per night. The pattern accelerated to 60 seconds per circuit. The table moved 3 times in one night, each time requiring repositioning. The radio spoke at every check, always providing accurate weather updates, always going silent on the second attempt. The salt lines in the basement developed 12 gaps during my Wednesday inspection on the 21st. I spent 43 minutes repairing them, the longest I'd ever been in the basement. Each gap required a full minute of observation. Each repair held. On the evening of December 23rd, as the storm was breaking, I heard knocking at the door. It was 9:30, not within the midnight to 4 prohibition window. The December procedures had no specific guidance for knocking at 9:30. I approached the front door carefully. Through the window beside the door, I could see a figure on the porch. Human-shaped, wearing a dark coat, face obscured by a hood. The figure knocked again. 3 measured knocks. Pause. 3 more knocks. I waited. The figure turned toward the window. I still couldn't see the face clearly, but I could see its posture. Expectant, patient. It knocked a 3rd time. Same pattern. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 knocks. Item 63 of December procedures. If unsure whether to respond to a stimulus, default to non-response and document the incident. The procedures cannot cover every possibility. When in doubt, maintain boundaries. I did not open the door. I did not speak. I stepped back from the window and waited in the dark kitchen. The figure stood on the porch for 7 minutes by the clock. Then it descended the stairs and walked toward the woods. Not running, not hurrying, a normal walking pace. It followed the cleared path to the fence line, stepped over the fence at the southeast corner, and continued into the trees. I documented this. I did not investigate the porch for tracks until morning. In daylight, the prints were clear, the same bare footprints that had been circling the house. But this time, a straight line from the woods to the porch, a 7-minute pause, then a straight line back. The figure had stood in 3 inches of fresh snow in bare feet for 7 minutes without shifting position. The prints showed no signs of cold damage or hesitation. The feet had been at 14 degrees 3 nights ago. The temperature last night had been 9 degrees. December closed with clear skies and bitter cold. The temperature dropped to 4 degrees below zero on the 27th, 2 below on the 28th, 8 below on the 30th. I burned wood at the maximum sustainable rate, feeding the stove every 3 hours, day and night. The deer appeared twice during the cold snap, always at the southwest fence post, always maintaining the 10-yard distance. On the second appearance, it stayed for 15 minutes, longer than usual. We maintained intermittent eye contact. Its breath made clouds in the frozen air. When it left, I felt something close to loss. January procedures arrived with the new year, 71 items, the longest list yet. New requirements: check ice formation on all windows at 6 in the morning and 6 in the evening. Maintain specific ice thickness on north window, no more than 1/8 inch, no less than 1/16 inch. Modified basement protocol for frozen ground conditions, daily checks of foundation for frost heave with measurement specifications. The window routine changed again. North window now uncovered only between 4:35 and 5:05 in the morning, covered at all other times. The midwinter darkness made the procedure feel different, moving through the house with only flashlight and wood stove glow. On January 7th, the fence posts decreased. Sunday morning count, east side showed 62 posts instead of 64. Total count, 254 instead of 256. I verified twice. 62. 254. 2 posts had disappeared overnight. No gaps in the fence, no disturbed snow, no signs of removal. The spacing remained perfect at 20 feet intervals. The cairns had adjusted accordingly, still marking every fifth post. Emergency Protocol A. I gathered supplies immediately. Food, water, batteries, salt, flashlight, radio, first aid kit. I moved everything to the upstairs bedroom. I closed and locked all ground floor doors and windows. I drew a salt line across the top of the staircase, 2 inches thick, continuous, and unbroken. The time was 10:35 in the morning. I would remain upstairs until dawn on January 10th. The first night was quiet. I sat in the bedroom with battery-powered lamp and my uncle's binder, reading through procedures I'd already memorized. The familiar routines were comforting. Check, verify, measure, document. The world reduced to observable actions and correct responses. At 2 in the morning, something walked through the house below. Footsteps on the kitchen floor, slow and deliberate. Not the circling pattern from outside. An interior exploration. Cabinet doors opened and closed. The table scraped across the floor. Water ran in the sink for 30 seconds. I sat on the bed and listened. The salt line at the top of the stairs was intact. I could see it in the lamplight, a bright barrier across the threshold. The footsteps approached the stairs. 1 step up, 2 steps, 3. A pause. I counted 10 seconds of silence. Then the footsteps retreated, crossing the kitchen again, fading toward the basement door. I heard the basement door open. I had locked that door during my supply gathering. The brass key was in my pocket. The door had opened anyway. From the basement came sounds, objects moving, something heavy dragging across concrete, a rhythmic tapping like a hammer on stone. These sounds continued for 6 hours, until dawn. Then, silence. I did not go downstairs. The second night brought different sounds. Scratching at the windows, all of them synchronized. A steady rhythm like claws or branches, though there were no trees close enough to touch the house. The scratching continued for 2 hours, then stopped, then began again. Stop and start through the entire night. At 3 in the morning, the radio activated by itself. I had powered it off as a precaution, but the speaker crackled to life anyway. A voice. "This is Station 6, checking compliance. Respond if you can hear this message." I did not respond. The radio was off. The voice was not bound by power states. "Failure to respond will be noted," the voice said. Then static. Then silence. The radio did not activate again. The third night tested the boundaries differently. The voice from the woods started at 9, but this time it came from inside the house. My mother's voice calling from the kitchen. "Honey, I need your help down here. Something's wrong with the stove." I remained in the bedroom. The salt line remained intact. The voice tried variations. My father, dead for 7 years. My childhood best friend. My first girlfriend, the lawyer. Ray, the delivery driver. Each voice perfect in its mimicry. Each asking me to come downstairs for some plausible reason. At midnight, the voices stopped and the footsteps began. These were different. Running steps, frantic, circling the interior of the house at speed. The pattern repeated endlessly. Kitchen to living room to mudroom to stairs. Pause at the salt line, retreat and repeat. Hundreds of circuits through the night. I counted them out of habit. 416 circuits before dawn. The fourth day brought silence. Complete, total silence. No wind, no settling of the house, no distant forest sounds. The absence of noise was oppressive, a pressure against my eardrums. I clapped my hands to verify I could still hear. The sound was flat, wrong, absorbed too quickly. I ate food that required no preparation. Crackers, canned fruit, water. I used the chamber pot stored in the closet as Protocol A specified. I waited. The silence continued through the fourth night. I slept in 2-hour intervals, waking to check the salt line, verify the door lock, listen to the nothing. The silence was worse than the sounds. Sounds provided information. Silence was potential, anything or nothing, impossible to interpret. Dawn on January 10th arrived with the sound of wind. Normal wind moving through trees carrying the small sounds of winter morning. The pressure lifted. The world became three-dimensional again. I waited 2 hours after dawn as the protocol specified, then descended the stairs. The salt line remained intact. I stepped over it carefully, bringing the flashlight and a full bag of salt. The ground floor showed signs of activity, but no permanent damage. The furniture had been moved and returned to position. Cabinet doors hung open. Every drawer had been pulled halfway out. The basement door stood open. I approached slowly. The basement light worked. I turned it on from the top of the stairs and descended, counting steps. 14. The salt lines were gone, not broken, not scattered, completely absent. The floor was bare concrete with no trace that salt had ever been poured there. The pattern my uncle had maintained for 32 years had been erased in 72 hours. I stood on the landing and considered my options. The protocol said, if salt lines have reformed themselves, normal operations can continue. If damage has spread beyond original pattern, evacuate property and call emergency number. Reform themselves was ambiguous. Gone could mean reform to nothing, or it could mean failure beyond recovery. I made a choice. I poured new salt from the bag, recreating the pattern from memory. It took 2 hours and 3 bags. The design was complex, asymmetrical, with specific angles that seemed arbitrary but which I reproduced as exactly as I could remember. When finished, I observed each section for 1 full minute. The salt remained in place. I ascended, locked the basement door, returned the key to the ring. I resumed the normal routine. That evening, Ray called on the satellite phone. I hadn't heard it ring in months. The sound startled me. Just checking in, Ray said. Weather Service had you folks flagged for that cold snap. Wanted to make sure you came through okay. I'm fine. Supplies holding well. Your uncle used to call after the hard weeks. Let me know he'd made it through. Thought you might appreciate the same. I was grateful in a way I couldn't articulate. Thank you. You're doing good out there. I can tell. The ones who don't make it, they call with questions or complaints by now. You just keep steady. He paused. You ever think about the leave envelope? I had not told him about that. He knew anyway. Not seriously, I said. Good. That envelope's a trap in its way. Once you read it, you can't stay, but staying gets easier. Your uncle told me that in his 5th year. Said the first winter is the hardest, but if you make it through without looking for reasons to leave, you've found something most people never have. What's that? A place where the rules work. He disconnected. I sat with the phone for a long time, thinking about that statement. The homestead's rules worked because I followed them exactly. There was no ambiguity, no gray area, no interpretation required. Do this, don't do that, measure this, document that. Cause and effect were explicit. The rest of the world wasn't like this. The rest of the world was navigating unstated social rules, changing expectations, contexts that shifted based on factors you couldn't observe. People said one thing and meant another. Situations that seemed safe turned dangerous for invisible reasons. Here, I knew exactly where I stood at every moment. That knowledge was worth something. January continued with brutal cold. The temperature stayed below zero for 18 consecutive days. The solar panels iced over despite the heating elements. I ran the generator for 6 hours daily just to maintain battery charge and cabin heat. The footsteps in snow came every night, sometimes the circling pattern, sometimes straight lines between fence and house. I documented each occurrence but stopped measuring the prints. They were always the same, 9 inches long, 4 inches wide, 1¼ inches deep. The basement salt lines held through Sunday and Wednesday inspections. Small gaps appeared, 3 or 4 per inspection, but the pattern remained largely intact. I repaired gaps as they occurred, and the repairs held. The deer appeared 7 times in January, always the southwest fence post, always 10 yards away. On the 23rd, it brought a fawn. This was not in the procedures. The doe stood in her usual position. The fawn stayed close beside her, maybe 6 months old, winter coat thick and gray-brown. They both watched me through the kitchen window. I watched back. The addendum had said nothing about a second deer. I reviewed the procedures carefully. No guidance for fawns, no prohibition against multiple deer, no revised protocol. I defaulted to non-response and documented the incident. The doe and fawn appeared together twice more before February. The fawn never crossed an invisible line 10 yards from the fence. It grazed, looked around, stayed beside its mother, behaved like a normal deer in every way except its perfect respect for a boundary I couldn't see. February brought thaw. The temperature climbed into the 30s for 3 days, melting the top layer of snow and creating ice when it refroze. The February procedures addressed this: specialized salt application for ice management, modified path-clearing protocols, daily checks for roof ice dams, adjusted generator usage as solar efficiency improved. 77 items. The February list was the longest yet. New requirements included dawn patrols of the fence line, checking for ice damage to posts, verification that cairns remained visible above snow level, and documentation of any animal tracks that crossed the boundary regardless of species. On February 9th, I found tracks crossing the fence. They entered at the northeast corner and exited at the southwest corner, a straight line through the property. The tracks were canine, possibly wolf or large dog. The stride was 52 inches. The prints measured 7 inches long and 5 inches wide. February procedures, item 68. Animal tracks crossing the boundary are acceptable unless they terminate at the cabin or shed. If tracks end without exiting, follow emergency protocol D immediately. These tracks exited. I documented them and continued the routine. The thaw ended on February 14th. The temperature dropped to 11 degrees overnight, freezing everything into sharp-edged hardness. Walking required careful foot placement. The paths became ice channels. That night, the knocking came during the prohibited hours. 2:37 in the morning. 3 measured knocks at the front door. Pause. 3 more knocks. The same pattern as the December visitor. I did not respond. The procedures were explicit. Do not respond to knocking between midnight and 4 in the morning. This was one of the earliest rules, present in every monthly procedure list, never amended or altered. The knocking continued. 3 knocks, pause, 3 knocks. The pattern repeated 18 times over 40 minutes. Then silence. In the morning, I checked the porch. Bare footprints in the ice, the same 9-inch prints that had circled the house all winter. This time they approached from the woods, stopped at the door, stood in one position for 40 minutes, then returned to the woods along the same path. During the 40 minutes, the temperature had been 7 degrees. The feet had been bare. I documented this and continued the routine. The second quarterly report was due February 28th. I photographed 3 months of logbook entries, December, January, and February. Every procedure checked, every anomaly noted, every inspection recorded. I sent the photos and received the same response. Compliance verified. Continue. 6 months completed, 6 months remaining. March arrived with signs of spring that felt dangerous rather than hopeful. The snow began melting in earnest. The fence posts emerged from drifts. The cairns became visible again. The March procedures reflected this transition. Daily monitoring of melt rates, adjustment of salt line maintenance for basement moisture, modified window routines as daylight increased, preparation for spring thaw flooding. 69 items. The basement salt lines began failing more frequently. 3 inspections in the first week of March required 6, 8, and 11 gap repairs respectively. The pattern was degrading faster than I could maintain it. On March 12th, during my Sunday inspection, salt disappeared while I was observing it. I had just poured a new line to fill a 15-inch gap. I stood on the landing and watched, counting seconds. At 42 seconds, the salt began to move, not scatter, not blow away. It pulled toward the center of the room in a thin stream, as if drawn by an invisible vacuum. In 7 seconds, the repair was gone, leaving bare concrete. Emergency Protocol B. I exited the basement immediately without attempting additional repairs. I locked the door and placed the spare brass key in the kitchen drawer as specified. I gathered 72-hour supplies and moved to the upstairs bedroom. The time was 3:27 in the afternoon. I would remain upstairs for 5 full days and nights. The containment period would end at 3:27 on March 17th. I established the salt line at the top of the stairs, 2 inches thick, continuous. I arranged my supplies within easy reach of the bed. I prepared for silence and darkness. The first night brought sounds from the basement, not footsteps or dragging, but a low vibration that made the house tremble. A frequency I felt in my chest rather than heard with my ears. It lasted for 3 hours, stopping and starting in irregular intervals. The vibration made the windows rattle and the dishes in the kitchen cabinets clink together. I sat in darkness as the protocol required. No lights, no movement, no sounds. At midnight, the vibrations stopped and the scratching began. This time it came from inside the walls. Not at the windows, but within the structure of the house, as if something moved through the spaces between studs. The scratching circled the bedroom, approaching and receding, testing. The salt line remained intact. The second day brought silence during daylight hours. I ate cold food, drank water, used the chamber pot. I did not move unnecessarily. I did not approach the windows. I sat on the bed and waited. That night the voices returned. They came from everywhere simultaneously, the walls, the floor, the ceiling. Not my mother's voice this time, not anyone I recognized, just voices speaking in overlapping layers, too many to count, saying words I couldn't quite hear. A susurrus of urgent communication that never resolved into meaning. The voices continued until dawn. The third day I noticed movement in the salt line. Not a break, not a gap. The salt was shifting microscopically, individual grains rotating in place. I watched for an hour. The movement was real. The line was degrading from within. I poured more salt from my supply bag, reinforcing the barrier. The new salt settled and held. The original line continued its slow rotation. That night something climbed the stairs. I heard each step clearly. 14 steps, same as always, but slower, with pauses between each one. At the top, a pause. I could sense presence on the other side of the salt line, weight and intention. A voice spoke, very close. "You're doing well. The pattern is almost complete." It was my uncle's voice. I had never heard my uncle's voice before. He had died before I arrived, but I knew it was his voice anyway, in the way you know things in dreams. "Just a few more months," the voice said. "You're stronger than I expected. The homestead chose well." I did not respond. I sat in darkness and silence. After 10 minutes, the presence descended the stairs, 14 steps, then silence. The fourth day brought increasing salt line degradation. I reinforced it 3 times, using most of my supply. The rotation continued in the original salt, spreading to the new additions. By evening, the entire line was in motion, a slowly spinning barrier that somehow maintained its integrity while constantly shifting. That night I woke to find my door open. I had not heard it open. I had certainly not opened it myself. The door stood wide, revealing the dark hallway beyond. The salt line was intact across the threshold. Nothing had crossed it. I got up and closed the door. The latch clicked. I returned to bed. At 2 in the morning, I woke to find the door open again. Same situation. Salt line intact, door standing wide. I closed it again. This happened 6 times through the night. The door would not stay closed. I tried blocking it with the chair. The chair fell over and the door opened. I tried tying the handle to the bed frame with a belt. The belt came loose and the door opened. At dawn, I stopped trying and left the door open. The salt line remained intact. That was the boundary that mattered. The fifth day was March 17th. The containment period would end at 3:27 in the afternoon. The hours moved slowly. I sat on the bed and watched the salt line rotate and hold. The voices had stopped. The vibrations had stopped. The house was quiet. At 3:15, I heard the front door open and close. Footsteps crossed the kitchen. The basement door opened. Footsteps descended. A pause, then footsteps ascending. The basement door closed. The footsteps crossed to the base of the stairs. I checked my watch, 3:23. The footsteps began climbing, slow and deliberate. At 3:26, they reached the top. A shadow fell across the salt line but did not cross it. My watch showed 3:27. The shadow withdrew. The footsteps descended. The containment period was complete. I waited 2 hours as a precaution, then descended the stairs. The salt line at the top remained intact. I stepped over it carefully. The ground floor appeared normal. I approached the basement door and unlocked it with the key from the drawer. I turned on the light and descended. The salt lines had reformed, not the pattern I had originally poured. A new pattern, more complex, with additional curves and angles that created sections within sections. The lines were perfect, as if poured with geometric precision. The salt was fresh and white, showing no signs of age or disturbance. The protocol had said, if salt lines have reformed themselves, normal operations can continue. They had reformed themselves. I resumed normal operations. March closed with rapid snowmelt and flooding. The procedures for spring thaw were extensive. Daily water level monitoring of the basement, adjusted salt applications as moisture increased, verification that runoff patterns directed water away from the foundation, emergency sandbagging protocols if water approached the door threshold. The deer appeared frequently now, always the doe and fawn together. As spring approached, they grazed longer, sometimes staying visible for 30 minutes. The 10-yard boundary never varied. They never approached the fence, never attempted to cross, never showed interest in crossing. On March 27th, a third deer appeared. A large buck, 8-point antlers, standing with the doe and fawn at the southwest fence post. All three maintained the 10-yard distance. All three watched me through the kitchen window. The procedures mentioned only one deer. I documented the addition and continued the routine. April brought warmth and mud. The fence posts were fully visible now. I conducted my Sunday count, 254 posts total, the same count as after the January decrease. The posts had not returned. The boundary had contracted and stabilized at its new dimensions. April procedures, 63 items, focused on spring maintenance, window cleaning with specific techniques for the north window, salt line adjustments for dry conditions, modified fence post inspection for frost heave damage, preparation for the arrival of birds and insects with associated protocols. Item 47 was new. Spring may bring visitors. Human visitors are acceptable only if they arrive during daylight hours, identify themselves clearly, and do not ask to enter the house or approach the fence. Delivery drivers are an exception and may approach as needed. All other visitors should be kept at minimum 30-yard distance. No visitors came. The footsteps in snow had stopped with the last of winter. New sounds replaced them. Scratching at the foundation, impacts against the walls like thrown stones, and on April 9th, singing. It came from the woods at dusk, a wordless melody in multiple voices harmonizing perfectly. The song had no recognizable structure, no repeated phrases, just constant variation on a theme I couldn't identify. It lasted for 7 minutes, then stopped. April procedures mentioned singing only briefly. Musical sounds from the woods during spring are common and require no response unless they enter the house. If music occurs inside the house, evacuate immediately and follow Emergency Protocol F. The singing stayed outside. I began preparing for summer. The binder included preliminary June and July procedures, which I studied during evening hours. Summer was different. Longer days meant modified window routines. Warmer temperatures allowed different salt line configurations, and growing season introduced agricultural protocols I hadn't anticipated. My uncle had maintained a garden. The garden plot was visible now that snow had cleared, a rectangular space 30 feet by 40 feet on the south side of the house. The soil was rich and dark, worked over many years. The procedure binder included a separate section for gardening: what to plant, when to plant it, spacing requirements, watering schedule, harvest procedures. Item 6 of the garden protocol: do not plant in rows. Use the spiral pattern marked on the diagram. Plants must follow the spiral with no gaps. Alternate vegetables and flowers according to the master list. The diagram showed a complex spiral that began at the center of the plot and wound outward to the edges. Each position in the spiral was numbered and corresponded to a specific plant type on the master list. Position 1, tomato. Position 2, marigold. Position 3, lettuce. Position 4, zinnia. The pattern continued for 247 positions. I would begin planting in mid-May according to the schedule. The third quarterly report was due April 30th. I photographed March and April logbook entries and sent them to the lawyer. His response came within an hour. Compliance verified. Continue. 9 months completed. Impressive consistency. I had not thought of it as impressive. I had simply followed the procedures exactly as written. But I recognized that 9 months of perfect compliance to a system this complex was unusual. Most people would have deviated by now, either from curiosity or frustration or simple human error. I had not deviated. I had chosen safe over curious, as Ray had advised. May arrived with green growth and bird songs. The procedures expanded again. 72 items, including new requirements for garden preparation, window adjustments for longer daylight, spring cleaning protocols with specific products and techniques, and management of insects that would enter the house during warm weather. Item 64. Spiders are encouraged. Do not remove webs from corners or ceilings. Maintain minimum spider population of 12 visible webs throughout the house. If population drops below 12, reduce outdoor light usage to encourage migration indoors. I had been cleaning webs out of habit during my first months. I stopped. The spiders returned. By mid-May, I counted 17 webs in various corners. The garden planting began on May 15th as scheduled. I worked from dawn to dusk for 3 days, following the spiral pattern exactly. Each plant went into its designated position, measured and verified against the diagram. Tomatoes alternated with marigolds, lettuce alternated with zinnias. Beans, cucumbers, peppers, and cosmos filled their assigned positions in the pattern. When complete, the spiral was visible from the upstairs window, a green design that curved through the dark soil. That night, the footsteps returned, not in snow but on bare ground, circling the house in the familiar pattern, 212 steps at 2 in the morning. I had not heard them since March. Their return felt like a confirmation that planting had been performed correctly. I documented this in the logbook. Garden planted according to spiral pattern. Footsteps resumed at 2:04 a.m. Count normal at 212 steps. The basement salt lines held stable through May. Small gaps appeared during inspections, but repairs held without incident. The pattern my uncle had maintained for 32 years was gone, replaced by something more complex. But it functioned. The containment remained effective. On May 23rd, Ray delivered supplies and stayed for coffee. "You're looking good," he said, sitting at the kitchen table. Settled in, that's a good sign. It's been 9 months. That's the threshold usually. The ones who can't make it, they break by 9 months. After that, it gets easier. You've built the right habits. He glanced out the window at the garden. I see you planted the spiral. As specified. Your uncle did that every year for 32 years. Never missed a season. Never varied the pattern. Ray sipped his coffee. You ever wonder what would happen if you planted in rows instead? No, he smiled. That's exactly the right answer. The curious ones don't make it. They have to test the boundaries, find out why. But the why doesn't matter, only the what and the how. I considered this. You know more than you've told me. I know what I've observed over 18 years of deliveries. I know your uncle was rational and careful and lived here successfully for 3 decades. I know the people who followed the procedures stayed healthy and the people who didn't. He trailed off. Well, I haven't met any people who didn't. They left before I could meet them. How many before my uncle? 3 that I knew of. Longest lasted 4 years. Shortest lasted 6 weeks. Your uncle was the record holder until you. He finished his coffee and stood. You're going to make it. I can tell. You've got the temperament. Some people need to understand. You just need things to work. After he left, I thought about that distinction. Need to understand versus need things to work. I had always been the second type. As a child, I'd followed rules without questioning them because rules provided structure. As an adult, I'd gravitated toward jobs with clear procedures and measurable outcomes. The homestead was an extreme version of this, but it was fundamentally the same principle. Follow the procedures, get predictable results. Safe, secure, ordered. The rest of the world wasn't like this anymore. The rest of the world was chaos dressed in ambiguity. June brought summer heat and long days. The procedures reflected the season, 68 items focusing on garden maintenance, adjusted window routines for minimal coverage hours, basement salt line modifications for dry conditions, and management of increased wildlife activity. Item 53. The deer will bring additional members during summer. Groups of up to 7 deer are acceptable at the southwest fence post. They will not cross the boundary. Do not attempt to count or track individual deer. The group itself is the relevant unit. By mid-June, I regularly saw 5 or 6 deer at the southwest post. They arrived in late afternoon, grazed for an hour, and departed before dark. The original doe and fawn were always present. The others varied. The garden grew according to the spiral pattern. The plants were healthy and vigorous. I watered according to schedule, weeded according to specification, and maintained the precise spiral shape. By June 20th, the tomato plants were 2 feet tall and flowering. The radio spoke more frequently during summer. Not every check, but perhaps 1 in 5. Always on the second attempt, the voice would be gone. The messages varied. Radio check received. Garden growth normal for season. Radio check received. Deer count acceptable. Radio check received. Fence integrity verified. I never responded. The voice never required response. It simply confirmed observations and disconnected. On June 27th, the voice said something different. Radio check received. Basement pattern evolution progressing on schedule. No intervention required. I documented this. I did not know what basement pattern evolution meant. The salt lines had been stable for 3 months, but the voice seemed to consider this expected rather than concerning. July was the easiest month yet. 59 procedures, the shortest list since October. Summer days were long and warm. The garden required daily attention, but the work was satisfying. The tomatoes ripened in late July. I harvested according to specification. Only fully red fruit, picked in the morning, never in the afternoon, always moving inward along the spiral from the outside positions. The harvest was abundant. more tomatoes than I could eat. The procedures specified excess harvest should be left at the southeast fence post at dawn. By afternoon, it will be gone. This is expected and requires no documentation. I left 6 tomatoes at the southeast post on July 21st. By noon, they were gone. No tracks, no signs of removal, just bare ground where the tomatoes had been. I did this every few days through late July and into August. The excess was always gone by afternoon. The footsteps came every night during summer, always at 2 in the morning, always 212 steps. The sound was different on dry ground than on snow, a softer rhythm, but the count never varied. On July 30th, day 331, I realized I had lived at the homestead for 11 months, 1 month remaining. The final quarterly report was due July 31st. I photographed May, June, and July logbook entries and sent them to the lawyer. His response: compliance verified. Continue. 1 month to completion. The will provisions will be finalized on October 2nd. Property will transfer to you permanently at that time. Congratulations on your consistency. August procedures arrived with the final monthly list, 61 items. New requirements focused on harvest completion, garden cleanup, preparation for fall transition, and verification that all systems remained stable as the year cycled back to October. There was a sense of completion in the procedures, a winding down toward the anniversary, item 57. August is the month of verification. You have demonstrated compliance for 11 months. The final month requires only continued maintenance of established patterns. No new challenges will be introduced. The homestead recognizes successful adaptation. This was the first time the procedures had directly addressed me as a person rather than simply listing tasks. The homestead recognizes successful adaptation. The phrase suggested intention, awareness, evaluation. I chose not to examine that implication too closely. The garden spiral completed its cycle in August. The last position, number 247, produced a single large pumpkin that ripened on August 12th. The procedures specified: the final pumpkin marks cycle completion, harvest at sunset on the day it reaches full orange color, carry it to the north fence post, place it exactly at the fence base, return to the house without looking back. I followed these instructions exactly. The pumpkin was heavy, perhaps 40 pounds. I carried it to the north fence post at sunset, placed it at the base, and returned to the house without looking back. The next morning it was gone. The deer count increased in mid-August. 7 deer appeared at the southwest fence post, the maximum mentioned in procedures. They arrived every evening now, staying until full dark. The original doe was still recognizable. The fawn now nearly adult-sized. On August 20th, something new appeared with the deer. An 8th animal standing at the exact 10-yard distance. Not a deer. Wrong proportions, wrong posture. It was vaguely canine, but too tall, too thin, with legs that bent at angles that weren't quite right. It stood motionless among the deer, and the deer showed no concern about its presence. I watched from the kitchen window. The 8 animals grazed together for 30 minutes. Then, at some invisible signal, they all turned and walked into the woods together. August procedures mentioned only 7 deer. I documented the 8th animal in the logbook. Non-deer entity appeared with deer group at southwest fence post. Canine-like, unusual proportions. Maintained 10-yard distance. Departed with deer group after 30 minutes. The next morning, I found an addition to the procedures. A new sheet of paper had been inserted into the binder after the August list. The handwriting was my uncle's, but the ink was fresh. Addendum, August 21. The 8th is the marker of completion. Its appearance indicates successful year cycle. It is neither threat nor blessing, simply confirmation. If you see the 8th a second time before October 2nd, you have been accepted. If you do not see it again, you have been tolerated. Either outcome allows you to stay, but acceptance grants easier passage. I read this several times. The paper was real. The ink was fresh. My uncle had been dead for 11 months. I filed the addendum in the binder and continued the routine. The 8th appeared again on August 27th. This time it came alone at midnight, standing at the southwest fence post. It watched the house for 7 minutes, then turned and walked into the woods with that same wrong-angled gait. I had been accepted. September arrived with cooling temperatures and shorter days. The procedures for September were transitional, 65 items bridging summer and fall, preparing for the return to October routines. Garden cleanup, window coverage adjustments, salt line preparations for winter moisture, and verification of all systems before the year completed. The basement salt lines had evolved throughout the summer into an increasingly complex pattern. By September, they covered nearly the entire floor with interconnected designs that suggested structure beyond randomness. I no longer attempted to match my uncle's original pattern. I simply maintained what was there, repairing gaps as they appeared. The repairs always held now. The containment was stable. On September 15th, I received a call from the lawyer. "Final check before transfer," he said. "I need to verify you're still in residence and maintaining compliance." "I'm here. Everything's documented in the logbook." "I'll need final photos on October 1st. The transfer will be processed on October 2nd. He paused. "Your uncle included a message to be delivered at this point. Would you like to hear it?" "Yes." There was a sound of papers shuffling. Then the lawyer read, "To my nephew, if you're hearing this, you've completed the year. That's remarkable. Very few people have the temperament for this work. The homestead chose well when it allowed your inheritance. You now face a choice. You can stay permanently, in which case the procedures will continue to evolve with you. They'll become personalized, responsive to your patterns. The homestead learns. Or you can leave, in which case the property will pass to the next person the homestead selects. If you choose to leave, open the second envelope now. It will help you exit safely. If you choose to stay, burn the envelope unread. That knowledge will only make staying harder. Either way, you've proven something important about yourself. You can live with explicit boundaries. You can accept security over understanding. That's rare. Choose well, and James." The lawyer finished. "That's the full message. Do you have any questions?" "No." "Then I'll wait for your final photos on October 1st. Good luck with your decision." He disconnected. I sat at the kitchen table with the binder open to the October procedures. The year was almost complete. In 15 days, the cycle would return to its beginning. October 2nd through October 1st, the anniversary. The second envelope sat in the binder where I'd placed it 11 months ago. "Open only if you decide to leave." I had not decided to leave. The homestead had become home in a way no place had been before. The rules worked, the procedures provided structure, the anomalies were manageable within the established framework. I was safe here in a way I'd never been safe in the larger world. But there was also this. I was alone. The deer and the 8th were company of a sort, but they weren't human. Ray visited once every 2 weeks, but our conversations were brief. I had spent 11 months in near total isolation, following rules I didn't understand for purposes that remained obscure. Was this sustainable long-term? Could I live this way for 32 years as my uncle had? I didn't know. September 20th brought a frost warning. I covered the last of the garden plants according to specification. The growing season was ending. The spiral pattern was dissolving back into soil. The footsteps came every night, consistent and unchanging, 212 steps at 2 in the morning. I no longer woke fully when they started. My body had learned to sleep through them, registering their presence without alarm. On September 25th, the deer stopped coming. I watched from the kitchen window at the usual time. The southwest fence post stood empty. No deer, no eighth, just empty ground and evening shadows. This continued for 3 days. Empty post, empty boundary, silence. Then on September 28th, they returned all at once, 7 deer and the 8th, arriving together at sunset. They grazed for an hour, maintaining perfect 10-yard distance. At full dark, they departed into the woods. Their return felt like benediction. October 1st arrived with clear skies and cold air. I photographed the final logbook pages, August, September, and the last entries from October 1st. 12 months of documentation, 365 days of perfect compliance. I sent the photos to the lawyer. His response came immediately. Transfer will be processed tomorrow. Property is yours. The will's final provision specifies that you may stay as long as you maintain the procedures. If you choose to leave, you must find a suitable replacement who completes the same 1-year test. Your uncle lived 32 years without finding a replacement. You may have better luck. The weight of that statement settled slowly. I wasn't just inheriting property. I was inheriting stewardship of something larger. The homestead required occupancy, required compliance, required a person who could live with explicit rules and accept their protection. If I left, I had to find someone else who could do this. That evening, I took the second envelope from the binder and carried it outside. The sun was setting, painting the fence posts gold and amber. The cairns cast long shadows across the boundary. I walked to the fire pit my uncle had built near the shed. The pit was clean, ready for use. I placed the envelope in the center and lit it with a match from the kit in my pocket. The paper burned quickly, flames consuming the seal without revealing what was written inside. I watched until nothing remained but ash. Then I scattered the ash into the wind. I had chosen to stay. That night I slept deeply and woke at 6:30 to begin October procedures for the second time. The year had cycled. The patterns continued. At breakfast I noticed something new in the binder. Another addendum, fresh ink, my uncle's handwriting. Addendum. October 2nd, Year 2. You chose to stay. The homestead thanks you. The procedures will now begin adjusting to your presence. Small changes only, incremental adaptations. You'll notice them gradually. Don't be alarmed. The homestead is learning you as you've learned it. This is how partnership begins. Welcome home, James. I set down the paper and looked out the north window. The woods beyond were still and peaceful in the morning light. The fence posts stood in perfect intervals. The cairns marked their positions. The boundaries held. I checked the solar batteries, 89%. I checked the propane level, 3/4 full. I counted the fence posts along the eastern line, 62 posts, 254 total. I recorded this in the logbook with the date and time. Everything was exactly as it should be. I was home.